Welcome to the show, everybody. Joseph Robert Cabot, the fantasy football counselor. In this video, we are talking about starts and sits for fantasy football week 5. I get a ton of DMs, and the biggest questions I get, do I start this guy or that guy? This is the episode that's going to help you, because I'm going to go over all the optimal plays and my suggestions, some of the guys I really like for the week at each position. Do they have an easy matchup? Do they have a hard matchup? This is going to lay it out. And I'm going to start off with quarterback, go to running back, wide receiver, tight end. I'm also going to give you some optimal defensive matchups as well. So very important episode to help you guys with your starts and sits. Let's have some fun. Let's talk fantasy football, all right? Before we get into this, guys, manscaped.com. Check them out. Use promo code ShowerLion. Okay, guys, go treat yourself at manscaped.com. Get yourself a trimmer, get yourself some ball wipes, get yourself some underwear, and save yourself 20% while doing it. Manscaped.com, guys. Linked it below here. If you're watching on YouTube, or just go to manscaped.com, use promo code ShowerLion, save yourself 20%. All right, let's dive into the quarterbacks. Now, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys do subscribe. We go year-round. We talk football. Just did a whole preview episode last night, so make sure you guys check that out. Guys, subscribe. Thumbs up. Helps the channel. Guys, I'm telling you, everybody that's gotten 16 rounds, my draft solution, following my stuff, is light years ahead of the competition. Let the sheep sleep. Let's dominate here on this channel. Also, follow me on Instagram below at Fantasy Football Counselor. Leave that thumbs up. It really helps. All right, so let's talk about this. So starting at the quarterback position, we're talking optimal matchups. One thing you are looking at when you do starts and sits is you got to look at how consistent they are, not only from the previous week, but for the whole season. Now we've got a whole season to kind of look at. We're about 5 weeks in. So now we got trends. We got kind of consistency throughout. So they may have a good matchup, but how consistent are they? So for example, right now, this is a perfect example. Jameis Winston, arguably the best matchup, playing Washington secondary. Great matchup going in this week, but he hasn't been that phenomenal the past 3 weeks. 10 points, 14 points, 13 points. I'm not really wowed. He had a good week 1, but since then, not that exciting. He does have a favorable matchup, so maybe he's on an upwards trend. That's something you got to look at for DFS, whether you want to risk it, but optimal matchups. So let's go over some guys' optimal matchups, okay? Jameis Winston, Josh Allen, Zach Wilson. Now, I don't think a lot of people are starting Zach Wilson in year long, but he has it in easy with Atlanta. I'm not starting him, right? Daniel Jones, very easy matchup versus Dallas. Third easiest versus position. Red hot Kyler Murray. You got to start him. He's been red hot. He's got an easy matchup versus San Fran. Jacoby Brissett, Mac Jones. So understand, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, year long, not that exciting. Jacoby Brissett, not that exciting, but favorable matchups. A lot of people ask about Ryan Tannehill. He's been safe. Okay, he's been safe. His quarterback, his wide receiver has been banged up. Got a good matchup. Dak Prescott versus the Giants, good matchup, okay? So you guys got to understand, guys, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. You got to know who's got the optimal matchup, and make sure you start him, right? For example, Pat Mahomes, tough matchup, Buffalo. Like, do you start him? For year long, you have to, right? He's been solid every single game. Pat Mahomes, tough matchup. Big Ben, tough matchup. Against Denver, do you start Big Ben? Nah, there's probably better options there. So one thing you got to look at, let me help you guys with starts and sits, okay, for any week. When you're looking at 2 players on your team, okay, you got to say this guy or that guy. And they're pretty even players. They've been pretty consistent. I look at the matchup. I say, okay, well, who's got the easier matchup? Then look at how they've done the past 3 weeks. Who's done better the past 3 weeks? You got to look at volume. You got to look at target share. So it's a lot of things when you're trying to decide between this guy and that guy. So I'm trying to give you guys the tools to do this for yourself as well with the starts and sits, because again, I can't answer all the questions. So it's up to you guys to start. You teach a person how to fish, they eat for a lifetime, right? You give them a fish, they eat for a day. Trying to teach you guys how to fish so you can, do it for a lifetime, okay? Other tough matchups here. I wouldn't start these guys anyway, but Davis Mills, Baker Mayfield. Taylor Heineke's got it in tough versus New Orleans secondary, but he's been pretty consistent from a fantasy perspective. So if you got him for a year long, you got to start him. What can you do? Aaron Rodgers versus Cincy secondary, 7th hardest versus position. Jalen Hurts versus Carolina. Trey Lance, if he gets the start, and Derek Carr, 10th hardest matchup first position against Chicago. Just so you know. Guys in the middle, mid-range matchups are Carson Wentz, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, all mid-range matchups, okay? Let's move on to the running back position, the guys that have the best matchup. Let's start off with that, okay? Dalvin Cook, although been banged up, has an easy matchup. Is he going to be limited? Is he going to be questionable? Like, what's going on? And this is why I avoid him. He's kind of screwed you guys the past 2 weeks. Last week, kind of coming off the field. Then the week before, got banged up. we don't even know what's going on with Dalvin Cook, okay? I'm not even following it anymore. Like, I can't keep track of this guy. He's just been busting every single week. He had 6 points last week. The week before, didn't play. The week before that, banged up. Disaster. So he's got a good matchup this week. So if you got him, I mean, what can you do? If he starts, I mean, you got to start him, right? So let's get to this. Leonard Fournette, also good matchup. Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, great matchups, but do you trust them? Do you trust Buffalo versus KC? I mean, I don't trust either one of those running backs, but they got a good matchup. Christian McCaffrey, apparently he's slated to play. He's got a good matchup against Philly, right? Do you trust him? Is he going to be limited? That's something you gotta look at, right? Derrick Henry, he's good to go. Great matchup this week versus Jacksonville, right? I'm trying to take a look at some other good matchups. DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, great matchups, but last week didn't do the greatest. They've got a good matchup this week, okay? Let's take a look at some guys that have it in tough, and I got to start them. I don't care. You know, and for a year long, you have to start them, but you got to know that they've got it in tough, so be prepared. So sometimes you have a starter and they have a bad week, and you're like, oh my God, they had a bad week. Well, they had the hardest matchup, and Najee Harris has the toughest matchup versus position against Denver. I'm still going to start him, okay? Austin Eckler, tough matchup versus Cleveland. This is a true test for both these guys who've been tearing it up the past couple of weeks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Buffalo, tough matchup. Saquon Barkley, my guy, fifth hardest matchup versus position. Rush defense, Dallas. He's got it in tough. So Melvin Gordon, guys like that. You know, they've got, Denver guys versus Pittsburgh's rush defense. Got it in tough. Him and Javonte Williams. Myles Gaskin, who's been, mediocre at best. Him and Ahmed, running backs for Miami, and Malcolm Brown have it in tough, okay, versus Tampa Bay's rush defense. J.D. McKissick, Antonio Gibson got it in tough. Aaron Jones, who's been pretty solid all year. Safe and solid. Cincinnati's rush defense, a little bit tougher, okay? Josh Jacobs, a little bit tougher. 12th hardest matchup versus position. Then you're asking about Nick Chubb, who sucked the past couple weeks. Kareem Hunt's been better. They've got a mid-range matchup versus the Chargers rush defense, and Zeke Elliott, also mid-range matchup, along with Jonathan Taylor and the Colts running backs, okay? Moving on to wide receivers here, all right? And again, I'm going to start my guys. I don't care how tough their matchup is. This is more to help you guys with DFS, and also going to help you guys if you're trying to make a decision between this guy and that guy. Just know they got it in tough. And also, if you guys, well, how's my guy? My guy kind of sucked this week. You understand why. So Austin Eckler could suck this week, but he's got a tough matchup. So you got to take it all in, right? Wide receiver, Marvin Jones. Okay, Jacksonville tight ends got it in easy. Other guys that got it in easy, Miami's wide receivers have got it in easy. The guys I like from there, I mean, Devontae Parker's been pretty solid, pretty safe. Probably start him if you have wide receivers from those guys, okay? Kadarius Toney got a good matchup. He was pretty good last week. I like him this week, especially in DFS. Kadarius Toney's a guy I may consider starting if I had him as a flex play. Sterling Shepard's been banged up as per usual. Gallday's going to see Diggs as the corner. I think Kadarius Toney's going to have a big week this week. That's my opinion. Hunter Renfro's got it in good. He's been rock solid, better than Ruggs pretty much. Ruggs gets those big plays. Had a couple bigger weeks, but past 2 weeks, it's been the Renfro show. Renfro, again, if you're looking at DFS, $4,900, great value. Good matchup versus Chicago secondary. Something to consider, okay? Tim Patrick, I mean, boring as hell. Someone's got to catch the ball there in Denver, but I mean, I'd probably consider starting him. He's got a favorable matchup this week against Pittsburgh. Stephon Diggs, who is due for a massive game, has been safe at best. His other guys on the team have been stepping it up. Either way, all wide receivers from the Buffalo Bills are due for a big game. Great matchup versus position, okay? They're playing KC. Deebo Samuel, who's been red hot. Great matchup versus Arizona secondary. And then you've got guys from Baltimore versus Indy. Also great matchup. Lamar Jackson could theoretically light up the Colts secondary. Something to be watching. I believe that's the Monday Night Football game, okay? Make sure you guys check that out. It's the Colts, and it's a make-or-break game for Carson Wentz. Literally, he's on thin ice. He pulled off a win, but he's got to keep it going. Let's talk about rough matchups, okay? All KC wide receivers. So a lot of people are going to be riding that Tyreek Hill train. Tyreek Hill's got it in tough, right? He's playing Buffalo secondary. Just be aware of that, okay? Other guys that got in tough. Bears wide receivers. I know Mooney's been safe. Robinson, they're playing Vegas. Got it in a little bit tough, okay? Cleveland wide receivers. Odell's been absolutely sucking. He's playing the Chargers. I'm not expecting anything big out of him. Wide receivers from the Chargers, they got it in tough versus Cleveland, but it's Herbert, so I'm not going to discount any of those guys at all. Nelson Aguilar, the Patriots, wide receivers, okay? Aguilar has pretty much been the safest. You know, I don't trust any of those wide receivers. I stayed away from the Patriots completely. They've gotten tough versus Houston's secondary, believe it or not. Also, Philly, they're playing Carolina. So Rigor, Devontae Smith. I think Smith still has a big game. Again, that's my opinion. But again, they're playing Carolina secondary, 7th hardest matchup versus position, just to be aware. And of course, Baltimore plays it tough on the secondary. So all Colts receivers got in tough, including Michael Pittman, who's been safe at best the past couple weeks. 12 points last week. Nothing to get excited about. Zach Pascal's been crap in the bed the past 2 weeks. Paris Campbell, even worse. So looks like Pittman's the guy there if you are starting a Colts wide receiver. And then CeeDee Lamb having such a terrible, terrible week last week. Again, they've got a tough matchup. 10th hardest versus position against the Giants secondary. Problem again here was a lot of people drafted CeeDee Lamb in the second round, end of second, early third. I said stay away from him because they've got Amari Cooper, who's the one, and Michael Gallup. Now, Michael Gallup's been banged up. Wait till he comes back. There'll be less target share for CeeDee Lamb. And Dalton Schultz has stepped up, believe it or not, taking a bit of that volume away from him as well. So CeeDee Lamb has absolutely busted the past 2 weeks, including 3 points last week, which is absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous, okay? I kind of expected that, but not this bad. Jamar Chase, tough matchup as well. He's been pretty solid and consistent. 11th hardest matchup versus position. And then you've got your mid-range matchup guys, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, wide receivers, all mid-range. Miami, they're playing Miami. Then you've got Deontay Johnson. I think he's got a tougher matchup versus Denver, kind of mid to tough matchup. But I think Deontay's going to eat based on volume. Thielen, Jefferson, mid-range matchups for those guys. And Devontae Adams, I know you're curious about him. And DJ Moore, the two teams there, Carolina and Packers, both have mid-range matchups when you're looking at wide receiver, okay? So, again, those are your tough matchups versus easy matchups. But if you've got, you know, Tyreek Hill in year long, I mean, you got to start him. He's got a tough matchup, but how can you sit him, okay? Let's talk about those tight ends because everyone wants to know about the tight ends. So I'm just going to, tight ends, as long as I get 10 points out of my tight end, I'm a happy person. But understand, Kelsey, who's been ice cold, last week, he was solid the weeks before, ice cold last week. 5th hardest matchup versus position versus Buffalo. So he's got it in tough again. Darren Waller and George Kittle, all three of those top tight ends have tough matchups. George Kittle, 3rd hardest versus position versus Arizona. And you got Darren Waller, who's got it in tough versus Chicago. Chicago plays tight ends a little bit tougher. So Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, not expecting big things. A lot of people asking also about Hawkinson and Mark Andrews, very well-known tight ends. High expectations. Those guys have mid-range matchups, okay? Same with Dallas Goedert and Noah Fant. Now, Dalton Schultz, a guy who's been red hot. If you're playing DFS, he has it in easy versus the Giants. 3rd easiest matchup versus position. So if you are considering Dalton Schultz, he's got it in pretty good. Mike Gesicki's got it in good. Hunter Henry's got it in good. Geno Smith got it in good. Evan Ingram, if he can catch the ball, has got it in good. I don't trust Evan Ingram at all, okay? And, these guys went off last week, but CJ Uzomah and Mo Alley Cox, both very favorable matchup. Mo Alley Cox, the 2nd easiest versus position, and CJ Uzomah, the 6th easiest versus position versus Green Bay. Both those guys you may want to consider starting. So I get a question like, do I start CJ Uzomah coming off a big week or a guy like, George Kittle, who's kind of banged up? I may consider Uzomah. He's got an easier matchup, had a better week last week, and he wasn't as banged up, right? So you got to make the right decision in this case because, again, George Kittle banged up. Kelsey, 5th hardest matchup for his position, him or Uzomah. I'm probably still starting Kelsey. Coming off a bad week, he's going to trend upward. So there's a lot of things to consider, but at the end of the day, if you're torn between two guys you want to start, everything looks the same. The matchup looks the same. You're kind of torn. Go with your gut feeling because at the end of the day, you can't regret it because you're like, I went with my gut. I was torn between two, and I went with my gut, and it either works for you or it doesn't, but at least you know you made the right decision based on how you feel, okay? Okay, some easy matchups here for defense. Buccaneers versus Miami, Titans versus Jacksonville, Texans versus New England, Jacksonville versus Tennessee, Patriots versus Houston, Raiders versus Chicago, Packers versus Cincy, and possibly Steelers versus Denver. All favorable matchups if you are looking to stream a defense. Guys that got it in tough: Saints versus Washington, Chiefs versus Buffalo, Giants versus Dallas, Cleveland versus Chargers, Dolphins versus Buccaneers, and Washington versus New Orleans. All got it in a little bit tougher versus defense, as a defense, all right? So that's it, guys. Starts and sits. I've given a lot of golden nuggets here, a lot of tips here. Subscribe to the channel. I'm telling you guys, make sure you start the right person. Can make or break your week. But I'm sure by week 5, you got to feel who your starters are, who you're going to play every single week now. All right, guys? Stay sharp, subscribe to the channel, and of course, follow Instagram for amazing giveaways. All right? We'll talk soon, guys. I'm out.